Hi, everyone. This is John Daly again with BQB Publishing. I'm here today with Shelly Frome, award-winning mystery author of The Secluded Village Murders, Miranda and the D-Day Caper, and Shadow of the Gypsy. How are you doing today, Shelly?
I might be okay.
Okay, we were having a few, just for people watching this, we were having a few technical issues, but hopefully we'll be all right through the rest of this.
New York psychiatrists greet each other by saying, "You're fine, how am I?"
So, Shelly, tell me a little bit about yourself, your background and your interests.
Let's see, where can I start? How about starting when I changed my major to drama at the University of Miami? Can I start there?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. And then after a while, I wound up, Tennessee Williams used to come up from Key West, and he was working on a new play called Sweet Bird of Youth. Did you ever hear of that?
I don't think I have.
It was a movie with Paul Newman. Anyway, one day I found myself in this scene in a bar, and he fired 20 people, and he left me and the Paul Newman character alone. And he said, "Okay, I like this boy because I like his laugh." And then I would just lay back at the bar and just laugh at this Paul Newman character. And then I realized that the scene now worked because I was a troublemaker. I was causing something to happen. So that meant something to me. Then I still tried it safe, and I went to University of Arizona to study law. I thought that sounded like something everyday people would do. But the entire freshman class took up a collection to send me to Greenwich Village because I kept trying to make law interesting. And that drove everybody crazy. I would say, "It's a dark and stormy night." And they say, "No, Mr. Frome, just the rule of law." Did you ever see the law school books? They're all the same. There are no pictures on them or anything.
Right.
So, so then I became a starving actor. I went to New York, and I was in a couple of plays. Am I boring you? Is this working?
No, not at all. I find this all very interesting, actually.
Okay. And then one day, my old buddy Joan Rivers, whose real name was Molinsky then, she said, I gotta somehow or other go with her to this famous agent's office. So I went with her, and then the door closed. I heard all this screaming and yelling behind the door, and she came out, and her hair was disheveled, her blouse was ripped, she was crying, and she said, "No worries, Shelly, I got us a reading." So then I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I was in 2 off-Broadway plays and everything, but I just didn't want to do this anymore. So I went back to Miami, and I was the drama coach at this high school, but they told me I was too advanced. And then I went to New York. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm blowing this whole thing. My life is so fantastic. I can't remember. But anyway, I went from drama. They told me I was too advanced. So then I got a job at the University of Connecticut, and then I stayed on for 35 years, and I directed plays and I wrote plays. And then I discovered that if I turned to playwriting, which I did, all the characters would show up, and I didn't have to worry about casting anymore, because if you have the right people when you're doing a play, then it's beautiful. But if you have the wrong people and they aren't what you had in mind or anything, it just doesn't work. And it sort of reminds me of Edward Albee. Do you remember him? He did Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? I remember he said that he wanted the characters to be a certain way. He wanted George and Martha to be a certain way. He wanted it all to wind up like this. And at the University of Florida, up at the lounge, he told us that one day George and Martha didn't appear anymore, and he didn't know what was wrong. So in his mind, they said, Edward, if you don't back off and leave us alone, we're not coming back. You've got no play, you've got no movie, you've got nothing. So back off, otherwise you've had it. So he let George and Martha alone, and that was, I thought, fascinating, because then they came to life, and that meant a lot to me. So then when I went from that into writing novels and all that, I remember to leave the characters alone, because if I did my job right, then they would take off and I would have a book. Otherwise, I would just have something that's formulaic, and what's the point of doing that?
Right, right. Now you write both cozy mysteries and mystery thrillers. Can you explain what sort of drew you to the mystery genre and what inspires you to write in it and produce such great books?
Well, I don't want to upset you, but the idea about the cozy mystery isn't mine. It's the distributor's idea, because they somehow or other, people have to have a label. And I don't set out to write cozy mysteries or anything. I just write mysteries or books. And that, I hope I'm not getting in trouble here, but that made the distributor happy, because he had something to hang this on. So, and that's where the word cozy mystery came. But the books I write are just coming to life, or they're not coming to life. And if they're coming to life, then I'm okay. But I don't set out. In acting, that was called playing the result, and all bad actors play the result. Like right now, if I ask you to be scintillating, what would you do? Or provocative, or sweet, or wholesome. That's the result.
Mhm.
So then you would just be playing a stereotype, right?
Right, right.
So I always play the action, not the result. And then the distributor comes along and says, we can't sell it unless you give us a label. So that's where the word cozy came from.
Well, yeah, regardless, still, but mysteries is regardless if it's it sounds like it might not be accurate, but mysteries in general, it's what sort of inspires you to write those types of books?
Because something happens. There's something at stake. It isn't just another day. And there are all of these possibilities. And there are all of these marvelous characters who will appear. And things then become fascinating to me, because I think it was Rilke said that all art is a result of having been in danger and going as far as you can go and beyond. And I still remember that. And I remember, of course, Tennessee Williams saying, that boy gets to stay, because now we got some trouble. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh no, that's great.
It's an attempt anyway.
No, well, you talked about characters, and part of this, I think my next question, I think you already kind of answered, but one thing I've noticed that you have been universally hailed for as a writer is the very colorful cast of characters you've created in your books, and they've been described as quirky and complicated and always engaging. And I hope I don't get you in too much trouble with your friends, but it sounds like some of that inspiration does sort of come from being around some interesting people. And is that part of it? And or any of these characters ones that are sort of ground up, complete creations? Or it sounds like there was probably a lot of inspiration from the people you've met over the years.
Yeah, it's you can't have a play, an interesting play, unless you have interesting characters. The ones I've played, the plays that I've seen, because then something can catch on fire, something can be combustible, and there's this dynamic. And if they're not, if they're just flat characters, it's like Sonny and Cher, because Sonny wasn't able to do anything, but I think he stood around. I think he was able to breathe and walk or something, but he couldn't sing. He couldn't do anything. But Cher was there, and remember Sonny and Cher, and she would carry on. So, so they had half of a team. Now, I guess. But
No, that's an interesting way of looking at it for sure.
but then when you have any kind of like Peter, Paul, and Mary and all that, they sort of worked off each other, and then things happened. So without those colorful, interesting characters, if you just go back to Othello, Desdemona's just there talking to herself, nothing's going to happen. But you put Iago in, and Iago isn't just another guy. He's not being played by Keanu Reeves or something. You put Iago there, all of a sudden it starts to crackle, and then Othello becomes jealous, and things start to happen. So without that combination, I don't think you've got much. But that's just between you and me. You don't have to agree to anything I'm saying.
Oh no, I absolutely agree. I'm a fellow. I write thrillers myself, and I always try to put in about some really interesting characters, because I do think that stories really are, at least the stories that I tell, and I think the stories that you tell are very character driven. And without those interesting characters, I don't think the story is as interesting.
Yeah, because if I know what's going to happen next, or if this character doesn't surprise me, I don't want to do it. There's no reason for me to go back to the computer or whatever I'm doing. It's that surprise. And even Hemingway, you remember this? I don't know if you remember, but he would stop just before it was getting interesting, so that he couldn't sleep at night and couldn't wait to get back the next morning to see what would happen. So he always stopped writing just at that key moment, and then he would go back, and that's what fed him. And I remember the dramaturge at Hartford Stage told me she always went where the energy was, and she would even start her plays in the middle or somewhere, because that's where the energy was. And without that energy, remember, she couldn't create anything.
Right. Oh, that's really fascinating.
I'm trying.
Oh, no worries. So your upcoming book, Shadow of the Gypsy, it's set to release in about a month and a half. It's in early May, which is really just around the corner. I should mention that it's available for pre-order now everywhere. Can you tell people a little bit about it?
I'm going to play it safe now. I'm just going to read off the back cover and see
No worries.
see if I can get through that.
Sure.
Okay. A nemesis out of the past suddenly returns, forcing Josh Bartlett to come to terms with his true identity. And here's a review from someone from Mystery Writers of America, a preview of someone who reads it before it comes out, advanced, whatever. And she writes, by turns charming and chilling, Shadow of the Gypsy is that rarest of gems, a crime novel that curdles the blood, even as it tugs on the heartstrings. And that's from Beth Terrell, Mystery Writers of America.
Well, that's so strong.
The problem is it leaves out the love story, which is a component too, a major component. But
right, you don't want to spoil that.
I don't know if that's a characteristic or not that the distributor is going to be able to deal with.
So for you, I'm curious. What is the hardest part of writing novels?
It's keeping track of all the threads, because the characters aren't just sitting still, and life isn't just sitting still while this major protagonist is going through something, and and sort of remembering that back there in chapter 2, he said, I'm not putting up with this any longer. And then it's 4 days later, what has he been doing for those 4 days? He said, oh, I just remembered when he meets him that he wanted an answer 4 chapters ago. So what has he been doing? And can you follow that? And there are all of these threads and strands, and that's work.
Oh, I know. I very much empathize with that. I do in my writing, I do a lot of different people's perspectives, and they sort of connect. And it is a challenge to sort of keep everything straight and come back to the things you wanted to come back to. Sure.
Yeah, and remembering you've already covered that.
Right.
You've already said all this. Then you have this character saying the same thing that he said a couple of weeks ago or pages ago. You ever notice that happens that you?
Yeah, no, it's I totally hear you on that. And what would you say then on sort of on the other spectrum? What's the most rewarding part about writing a novel?
The surprise. The surprise. I didn't know this was going to happen. I didn't know she was going to do that. I didn't know she's now depressed or something. I've also written a book on playwriting, and I interviewed a bunch of playwriters, and one who wrote, I don't know if you remember these people who wrote, he wrote Tea and Sympathy, and I Never Sang for My Father. His name was Robert Anderson. Anyway, I interview these people, and he said that he writes to discover something meaningful he never knew that he knew. And I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that ability to really catch a reader, sort of knock them off balance a little bit with something. I think that there is something I find rewarding about that as well. It's the reaction to it, the feedback that they didn't see something coming. When people say they're sort of glued to the book, that's always a great feeling. I think for a lot of us novelists.
There's a teacher in the Midwest, a college professor. He said the only way to write something significant is to try not to write. Then if you wake up in the middle of the night saying, damn it, I can't stand it anymore, I've got to work through this, then you've got something. But if you know where it's going, and there are people that crank things out, and bless them, they're happy. I don't think Jack Reacher is changed at all. I think he's still invincible. No matter what happens, he doesn't get depressed. And they crank these Jack Reacher things out. And I guess his background was in advertising. So
Right.
He's got this formula, and he just hits this button, and Jack Reacher is going to do something impossible again. But I couldn't do that. I would fall asleep.
Yeah, there's definitely a formula. I think formula is the right word that you use there. A lot of shared characteristics of those books, but yeah, he's done fantastic with it. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of a cookie cutter element to it for sure. Well, thank you very much. It was great talking to you. As I mentioned to some of the other authors, I've talked to a lot of people in email exchanges over the years, but it's great to sort of talk face to face like this. Can you tell people how to find out more about you and your books?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I have a special authors page that Julia runs. You remember good old Julia?
Julie's great. Yeah.
She has a British accent, in case you haven't run into her.
Yes. No, we've talked. That's a great accent for sure.
Yeah, it's really, no one knows she's really from Brooklyn. It's amazing. And I have a website, which is shellyfrome.com. So I have that anyway.
Well, that's great. That's great. And we'll add that on here at the end of the video too for people to check out. And yeah, no, this was really interesting. It was really great talking to you, and I'm glad we got all those little technical glitches figure it out. Thanks again, Shelly, and I hope you have a great day.
Something to do with reality.
Yeah, that's right.
Remember Woody Allen said that reality isn't all bad. It's the only place you can still get a good steak.
Very, very good. Words to live by, right?
That's right.
Great. Thanks, Shelly.
Thank you.